All right, so welcome everyone to the December McKinney Vento and Foster Care office hours. And I have just a couple of quick DOE related updates, and then I'm going to pass it over to Melanie Junkins, who's joining us here today to talk about multilingual learners. So, awesome. Can people see the slides? Awesome, great. All right, so just a couple of quick things. Wanted to note, I also wanted to make sure Aubrey introduced herself as well. Aubrey, do you want to just do a quick introduction?
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you. Hello, I'm Aubrey Howard. I also work for the Maine DOE and the Office of School and Student Supports. One of the hats I wear is the State Education Agency Foster Care Point of Contact. And I think the next slide we have is just a save the date for our upcoming annual training. So this is for foster care points of contact, both at the LEA, SEA level, and then also our OCFS district points of contact. So this will be co-presented by myself and then Julie Hunter, who is the OCFS foster care point of contact. So that's going to be Thursday, January 29th. From 3 to 4, we'll be sending out a registration for soon, but just have to save the date for now. And if there's any questions on this, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute at any point throughout this training.
Great, awesome. And then I had just a couple of training spotlights to share as well. Our January office hours will be on special education surrogate parents, and we will be joined with by Sarah Ferguson in the Office of Special Services and Inclusive Education, who oversees special education surrogate parent appointments. So if that is something that you are interested in learning about, that is a great time to join. And we did push back for the first Thursday of January. We are going to do it on January 8th. So that second week of January, so that we're not having a New Year's Day office hours. And then I did want to just highlight a couple of offerings from Schoolhouse Connection. We have December 9th at 3 p.m. They're offering a free session on unlocking Title I dollars. So thinking about those Title I Part A set-asides for students experiencing homelessness. And then in January, their professional development offering is on understanding immigration status and financial aid eligibility with their higher education team. So those links will be available, and we'll share these slides with folks. I also wanted to highlight that we have brought back our monthly McKinney Vento liaison spotlights. And we have been interviewing Allie Nolan, who's been working with the Maine Department of Education, has been doing some interviews. And these are spotlights that have been going out in our monthly McKinney Vento newsletter, but they are going to be available on our website. Our McKinney Vento webpage is getting a makeover right now. Our old site is still up, but we'll soon have these all available online as well. And you can reference them in their newsletters, but they are a great resource for just learning about how other school districts are implementing McKinney Vento, and their liaisons have some advice for other liaisons in their area, and just talking about their structures at a local level and how McKinney Vento plays out in their community. Another highlight was just an update on that Preventing Student Homelessness program, that state-funded program that we've been overseeing the past couple of years. There was that priority notice that went out in September, the end of September, related to the reduction of funding through the Maine legislature for that. If you are an SAU that has participated in this program and completed a fiscal year 2025 application on Grants for Me, we will be adding a small allocation from the available funds that we had this year into that application this month, so that you'll have access to a small additional allocation, and I'll send some additional updates. But some questions have been coming in related to that, so I wanted to provide a quick update. And then we have our links to just our general foster care and McKinney Vento resources, including that link to subscribe to our newsletter if you have not yet subscribed for those monthly updates. So I am going to turn it over to Melanie Junkins, who is joining us today to talk about multilingual learners.
Hi, Signe. Thank you so much. As I am pulling up my screen right now, welcome to all of you. My name is Melanie Junkins. I am the Multilingual and Bilingual Education Specialist for the Department of Education. And one of the programs that I help oversee is supporting programs and educators when supporting multilingual learners. And so today I wanted to give you a little bit of a snapshot on who is identified as a multilingual learner and the rights and responsibilities for the district and how this corresponds with students that are highly mobile populations and potentially doing bids. So if my screen's gonna work here. So here are the Maine Department of Education. I'm sure you've seen these before, these professional trainings. And so in the role that I am in, it's providing information, guidance, and professional learning and supports to all of you. And I just truly thank Signe and Aubrey for inviting me in today. I work in the Office of Teaching and Learning here at the Maine Department of Education. This is a larger diagram of the offices that are in the Department of Ed, and my colleagues here on call are in the Office of School and Student Supports off to the right-hand side. But it's truly a collaboration on how we support multilingual learners, and we know at the department that it is a shared responsibility. So I'd love to talk first. This is kind of ML tidbit number one, but truly, I'd love for us to just talk about our names a minute and think about your name. Is there a significance in your name? Our names are really rooted in identity, or our identities are rooted in our names. I can't talk for a Thursday. This could be a birth name. It could be a second name. It could be a preferred name. You could be named after a Young and the Restless star. You could go by a preferred name. And so I would love for you to all think about your name and the historical context of it. Maybe there isn't a definition of that. And so why does a name matter? This is really the genesis of connection and belonging and being known. And it really sets up the conditions for purposeful engagement. And when we have a multilingual learner enter our space, or really any student, it's so important to get their name right and to never negate it by trying to shorten it. If I were to ask Signe, and what's your name? I just can't say it. I'm just going to call you S from now on. You're student S. Actually, you're Smiley. So I'm just going to call you Smiles from now on. And now all of a sudden, Signe, what I've done there is I've negated exactly who she is and everything she stands for and that historical context. And so when we practice getting our names right, the outcome is we're building trust and respect. So my husband, I hope he's not listening to me now, happens to be named after a Young and the Restless star. His name is Brock, and his mom gave him back in 1975, my brother-in-law, two choices, Brad or Brock. And she chose Brock. And so forever his name is Brock. Now, my husband's story is a little fascinating because he can trace his ancestors back to 1640. See, I can't talk. 1640 back to Brecon, Scotland. And his whatever grandfather, I think my husband said it's his ninth grandfather, was captured at the Battle of Dunbar during England's Third Civil War. And he boarded a ship called the Unity, and he took that ship all the way to Durham, New Hampshire. And in Durham, New Hampshire, when he got off the boat, his name was forever changed. It used to be John King, Jonking. With his thick Scottish accent, it came out as Junkins, so Junkins. Forever in history, since 1640, our last name was forever changed based upon the clerical error of that. And so then that trying to trace back the history was a little bit more challenging. And so it's truly important. This is ML 101. I'm sure you all know this and all the works that you do. And so if we think about it, and because we're a small group, I'd just like you to think about the names on this screen. How would we pronounce this? So if we were in a large group, I would have everybody come off mute and say it together, but I will just, because we're a smaller group, I will keep that so you can be, just think about it. So we all can see that this name is probably pronounced Clark, which is fantastic. There's not a lot of variations with this name. What about this name? In different parts of the state, it's pronounced Bullier. In my part of the state, it's pronounced Bullier. Now, where's the R you say? I would love to know that too, but I've gotten my hand slapped a time or two by not pronouncing it with the R. So full year. We also have this one right here. Some parts of the states, it's juret. Some parts of the states, it's guret. And this has a huge historical background. And so depending on whose name this is and where they were named from, they get quite defensive if you pronounce it wrong. So even taking these three common names that are found in the state of Maine, there's a lot of variations for the last two. And so it's so important to practice names. It's very purposeful for our connections. And so why are we connecting today our multilinguals and highly mobile students? Because those highly mobile students, as you all know, that could be experiencing homelessness, foster care. The other two categories of the federal definition are migrant education and military families. And those frequent school changes, that stability in relationships and instructional access can really mean the difference of being able to thrive or being able to survive. And so for multilingual learners, these disruptions can also interrupt these components of their education. English language development services, this is ELD, an ILAP implementation, which is an individual language access plan. You can think of an ILAP as the equivalent of an IEP for a student that has an identified disability under IDEA. It's also the continuity of MTSS Tier 1 supports and access to linguistically and culturally affirming classrooms. And so when we connect mobility and multilingual needs, this ensures decisions that protect the student's identity and language growth and equitable access to learning. We're also a small enough group that if you have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. And I'm sure Signe or Aubrey will let me know that they're there. I can't see my chat box from the screen. So identity as a core bid factor. So a multilingual learner's identity, including and not exclusive of a name, the language, a culture, a sense of belonging, it directly influences their learning, participation, and well-being. And when evaluating best interest, consider how a school change might impact the student's belonging and comfort, those built relationships in a trusted, safe space, ensuring continuity of culturally responsive practices, and maintaining strong communication with caregivers in their home language. So families have a right to access information that's being delivered to the schools in a language that they can best understand. And even if we have a student that's in, let's say, a foster care placement or a state ward, the parents and the surrogates or the guardians are allowed to have that communication in the language that they best understand. So if a student is primarily speaking Spanish with their parents, but they're moved into a home that's an English-speaking home, we are still giving those parents that information in Spanish. So we are making sure that we're providing multimodal ways to access that information. So I thought I would just give us a snapshot. Some of you might be in a district where you say, we don't have English learners. We don't have a multilingual learner. So, and I'm here to show you a little bit of how they're dispersed across the state. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will see all the colorful little boxes. That is anywhere that we have a Maine school administrative unit. As of last count, Maine has 204 school administrative units in our state. On the blue dots on the screen are anywhere from the 2024 school year, 2025, where we have at least one multilingual learner in that district. You can see that there is a big stretch right there on the 95 corridor that we don't have any identified English learners. And I'm here to tell you that as of 10 minutes ago, I just got the new data, we do have multilingual learners in those areas. So in the course of 2 years, we changed our student count for 15% increase in multilingual learners across our state. It is the fastest growing demographic of students across our country and the state of Maine as well. And also 60% of Maine's SAUs have enrolled at least one multilingual learner. 87% of those SAUs that have a multilingual learner, most of them have less than 50. So you might see pockets where there's 1, 2, 4. We also have seen areas, especially like in the Bangor region and Augusta region, that have exploded with multilingual learners, where historically they might have had 17 to 25, and now they're up over 100 within one school year. Today's student count, like I said 20 minutes ago, this was just given to me, is 8,293 across our state right now. This represents about 4.9% of our student body out of 168,000 students. Our overall number of students in the state of Maine continues to decline. However, the population of our multilingual learners continues to increase. And so when I'm talking about the different disparity of populations, we think of this here as a high incident, a mid-level incident, or a low incident. Most of our high incident schools have 100 plus students. This encompasses about 14 districts in our state right now. Then we have our mid-level and we have low incident. Like I said, 87% of our districts have less than 50. But no matter what the size of your ML population, they are entitled to these 3 buckets of services. One is proper identification. One is ML instruction, that evidence-based curriculum and explicit and systematic ELD, English language development instruction by a certified educator in the state of Maine. It's a 660, which is an ESOL certification. And then they also have the rights and opportunity for assessment. So what are they, or how are we showing growth and progress monitoring for this student? This comes into place, especially with bids, that if a student were to transfer within the annual testing range, we would need to make sure that that testing information gets over to the new receiving district in order to test them within that window. For the 2026 school year, our testing window opens the second week of January and concludes the last week of February. So we test mid-year. And so if you have a student that happens to transfer in that time, and they're a multilingual learner student, it would be really helpful to be able to contact that school and let them know. Because we use a WIDA portal, which is the state prescribed platform for English language proficiency. We already have those pre-identified labels and testing requirements already sent out to those districts. And so we can easily have those changed. I already told you about the low incident. And so really, again, no matter what size district, everyone is entitled to these three buckets of services. I've also sent these slides to Signe as well, so she can send these out after. Just a small note on terminology. Maine shifted to the term multilingual learner around 2019, as this is an asset-based term, and it really emphasizes the strengths and skills students bring to school. And so in building common knowledge, you'll hear me use multilingual learner or ELL, an English language learner, synonymously. It's really dependent on the funding. An English language learner, this is the federal recognized term. And in the state of Maine, again, we use multilingual learner. So you might hear either one. I'm referring to the same context. ESOL means English to speakers of other languages. This typically describes a role or a program. Bilingual is someone who is fluent in 2 or more languages. Do we have anybody on the call that's bilingual? Me neither. Do we have a dual language learner? Is someone used to mean a student who is learning 2 languages simultaneously? Typically, we say this is only up to age 8. However, what we have seen across the nation and in the state of Maine is that students coming in that have been in a refugee camp for all of their life or for the last 5 to 7 years of their life, because that's how long it takes to receive permission to immigrate into the United States, that they're simultaneously learning still 2 languages. Most of the time, they're simultaneously learning 3 languages, a heritage language of their family, a language of where they've been in a refugee camp, and then also English. Can anybody either drop in the chat or come off mute? Can you guess what the top 5 languages are other than English represented in Maine's student families? Spanish, yes, Spanish is number 2, or I'm sorry, number 3. Portuguese, yes, Portuguese is number 1. Arabic, yes, is number 4. French is number 5. Yes, we're only missing number 2. Lingala does not make the top 5. Somali, yes. Did I just see that? I think I did. So Somali is number 2. Somali historically has been the top language in the state of Maine for roughly the last 10 years. Only this year has it been overtaken by Portuguese. And again, this is just coming down to getting to know your students and who's in the room. You have access to all this information. This slide is not current because I didn't have the updated information 10 minutes ago. So this is last year's data. But we have on our Maine DOE data dashboards, we have all the up-to-date information that you can look up how many students are in what grade, that are speaking what language, what that student count is. And as you all just reported, Portuguese, Somali, Spanish, Arabic, and French are Maine's top 5 languages spoken outside the home, other than English. I'm going to go back. This is also a difference. 70% of the country's English language learners are actually Spanish speakers. Maine, we always love to be unique, and we certainly still are. So we break that model with our populations, and we're really proud of those facts. So multilingual learners, this is a program requirement. This is actually covered under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then there's 3 seminal court cases that I will not bore you with today, but we do have more information on our website for Maine multilingual learners. But these are 3 seminal cases that allow not only the right to have instruction, to access content, but also about enrolling students despite immigration status and making sure there's adequate personnel in order to do instruction. And so if you're interested, this will also be on the slide. What I'm asking you to do today is to put on your advocacy superpower cape. And it's about knowing the rights, understanding the roles, and asking the right questions. This happens to be my dog with an AI-driven image that we have at the department been asked to embrace a little bit. So this is Eleanor Rigby, and she's standing as a superhero in front of a school. And what Eleanor is asking you to do is to be an advocate. And so how can you be an advocate for multilingual learners when you might not have any experience with multilingual learners? I'm here to give you a couple tips and tricks along the way and some probing questions at the end. So as highlighted in the slides before, MLs are going to rely on consistent supports. And so during bid reviews, identify whether the student can maintain the ILAP services and goals, access to an ESOL endorsed teacher, what are the MTSS Tier 1 integrated supports, how can we scaffold based on the WIDA can-do descriptors. This is not really for the educator or for your liaisons to figure out, but it's to go back to your ESOL instructor and say, how am I supposed to be doing this, or what can you do to support me? Fun fact, every district in the state of Maine has to identify a director or / coordinator of multilingual programs before they can submit their account on October 1. We require that in our database known as NEO. And then what does interpretation and translation for family communication look like? So a disruption in supports can really slow language development and limit content access. We are not allowed to hold students back based upon English language proficiency, and they must be placed in a grade appropriate to their age. And so multilingual programming, when we move past identification and receiving ELD instruction and that ILAP implementation, all of their needs are being met in that Tier 1 support. And this is always through access and opportunity, through planning, instruction, and assessment. So in an integrated multi-tiered systems of support, my former colleague, she just left, Andrea Logan, made this beautiful graphic here on the right. And what she was saying is that leadership, infrastructure, and continuous improvement, as long as they are set, we are going to be able to meet the Tier 1 instruction, despite if time or people or place change. And so making sure that students have those services through your continuous leadership is really important in an MTSS component. And so what are opportunities as a part of the best interest determination that we can take part in? This means that school stability decisions ensure that multilingual learners continue to access academically rigorous classrooms. My own little tagline is to never simplify learning, but it's to amplify access for our students, and that's for all students. It's about having meaningful peer and adult relationships, programs supporting both language and content development. I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference of those in just a moment. and consistent routines and expectations. The bid must prioritize, as you all know, those environments that maximize learning opportunities and protect growth trajectories. So in a shifting paradigm, back in the 20th century, I think we can all say we're from the 1900s. That's been a funny thing for my kids now to say as they're in their 20s. But back then, we really had this paradigm where we had one educator in the building that was responsible for an English language learner. And what we've done is we've shifted this paradigm so that entire school building or entire community is now in charge of the learning and growth for a student who speaks another language. And it's truly about integrating language and content learning. So I want to take you a little bit beyond the surface. So researcher Jim Cummings in 1979 really captured these two components. So the first one is called basic interpersonal skills, and this is called BICS. And the other one is cognitive academic language proficiency, also known as CALP. So what Jim said is that you're in your BICS component. This is your everyday social language. This is going to the bathroom, asking for help, going to the grocery store, the library. This takes anywhere from 1 to 2 years to develop to become fluent. And that's just what we see above that iceberg. Oftentimes, multilingual learners get mistaken for understanding English if they can ask to use the bathroom, or they can order their pizza for lunch, or they can talk about their basic needs. But in a cognitive academic language proficiency, so under that iceberg, it takes 5 to 7 years to develop fully academic language in English. So this is critical for long-term academic achievement for those college and career-ready pathways. Students that are appropriately supported for 5 to 7 years in an academic way will show that English proficiency. If they are not given that opportunity to succeed through a CALP mindset, they will not advance into that. That has to come with explicit instruction and that English language development support. So not only fostering the BICS, but also increasing on the CALP. So Dr. Stephen Krashen, so another researcher, introduced the stages of language acquisition. And what he says is that in a pre-production stage, the student expression is listening, they're minimal speaking. This is often referred to as a silent period. Students will use visuals and gestures and 1 or 2 word commands. The students can be in this pre-production phase in your classrooms from anywhere from 0 to 6 months. This really is predicated on trust for people and how they can be safe in their environment to learn and make mistakes. And in early production, this means we're using 1 or 2 word phrases for an entire context. So if I were to try to describe Signy's vest right now in 1 or 2 words, if I was beside her, I might point to her shirt and I might say blue. So I'm only using 1 or 2 words for an entire context. This takes a few months, and the teacher tip here is about praise and providing structure. So even if you don't have a multilingual that's in a highly mobile category, but you have a multilingual in your district, both of these 2 resources are on our website for download and to share and distribute across your districts. And then we have speech emergence. And so this is simple sentences. This is being able to order that pizza. This is being able to answer some of those leveled readers. You really want to encourage sentence expansion here. So starting with your basic sentence of a subject, a verb, and an object, and then moving past that to add in those adjectives, those adverbs, those particles. This can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years in a properly supported classroom to really increase. So I'd love for us to take just a minute. I'm going to leave this on the screen, but I'm going to put you all on my screen. I would love for you to think of your very favorite childhood toy, And what did it do? What did it sound like? What did it smell like? What did it look like? And I would love for you to come off mute and describe that in an early production phase. So you are only using 1 or a 2 word phrase for 1 context. So for instance, if I were to describe a Barbie doll, I would not go blonde, hair, long. I would use 1 word to describe the long blonde hair of a Barbie doll. So let me give you another example. I'm going to use one or two words to describe my very favorite childhood toy, and we'll see if you can guess it. So we're going to start. Vegetable, green, long, yarn, yellow. Can anybody think of what I might be talking about? Signy?
Is it Cabbage Patch?
It's a Cabbage Patch doll. Yes, 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 yes. The things that I can think of now, vegetable, if I'm a brand new learner, I'm probably not saying that, but that's usually my cue. And so I'd like for you now to come up with one or two words to describe your very favorite childhood toy. If you don't want to come off mute, try to drop it in the chat and we will guess on what your very favorite childhood toy was. I'm also a college professor, so I have really good teacher wait time.
I can go.
Okay.
Brown, round, ears, hands.
Teddy Ruxpin?
The first part, teddy, a teddy bear. Yes.
I like it. Anybody else want to go? Try? I know I'm asking you to be really vulnerable right now.
I can go.
Okay.
TV, blue, puppet.
Grover. Sesame Street.
Yes.
No. Grover?
Yes, Grover. That was really good. That was good.
Yes. And it works because we all have similar shared experiences, though. We all have an exposure to certain types or cultural contexts that this activity works. We've done this with whole schools, and it's really interesting to see the generational differences as well. And so I won't put anybody else on the spot unless you're really dying to do that. But keeping these things in mind as well when getting to know the student. So what stage of language acquisition are they in? And that is information that's accessible because they all take a screener. So if I was in a district, this is what I would do. I usually use a book or I use a very favorite childhood toy to think about. I think of something that's familiar that people could articulate quite well, and then ask them in a 1, 2, or 3 stage to sit together at a table. I give them each a different stage of language production and try to have them communicate. And what they do is they come away going, wow, that was really hard. I could understand what was being asked of me, but I couldn't quite express it. And so it's those expressive skills that we work on with students. And so when we ask as an ESOL educator, we really like this term translanguaging. Have any of you ever heard this term translanguaging before? Maybe, yes, no. So translanguaging is like using every tool in your toolbox to make sense of the world. And it could be that you know one word in English and one word in Spanish. You could also be thinking it's not about really switching back and forth between languages. You're constantly mixing and merging those languages, and so are our students. If any of you ever tried to learn a second language, even like Duolingo level, it's hard, right? Like you really have to take a conscious effort to make sure that you're getting context right. Well, students that are just trying to survive every day don't have the luxury of waiting to go, oh, can I use this in the right context? And so allowing students to use translanguaging is such a positive component. And there are many districts or schools that really frown upon that. And it's sad because students should be able to use all the tools in their toolbox in order to thrive. Some districts often ask students to do a student profile. So this is something that if you get a student in that has had a bid done, it might be asking their former district about some of their background. And so it's about asking what their interests are, looking for areas of growth, For multilingual learners, one of my very favorite questions is, what's your favorite holiday? And when we talk about that, you can really get a background on what is prioritized. And then also, do they have considerations that we need to take into account? Maybe are they a family that celebrates Ramadan? Will that student be struggling during those times? Should we not schedule field trips? Should we not have them sit in the cafeteria while all their peers are eating, especially for those older grades? And so here's Eleanor Rigby again, and here are the key questions that you can ask during a bid that could help you make a more informed decision. So how does this move impact the student's ILAP and ELD services? Will the student continue receiving MTSS Tier 1 integrated supports? How will the transition affect their language development process? Will the student's relationships, identity, and belonging be preserved? And are families receiving full communication in their home language? I firmly believe that purposeful questions lead to purposeful decisions. And always knowing the right questions to ask and understanding the roles will always allow us to ask those right questions and get those answers. So when I'm connecting the ML needs to a bid, I really want to make sure, again, there's access to grade level content, there's continuity in English language development, there is that cultural and linguistic belonging, there's academic and social emotional stability. Here are a few resources for your district if you have a multilingual learner. One is our website. We have fully redone and we've built this out in several different areas that could be helpful. We also have translations. So this one actually comes out of the Office of School and Student Supports. It was a collaboration when I worked in that office that I assisted with, and it's about having the annual health forms, seizure, diabetes, and asthma, and medical authorizations in Maine's, at the time, top 10 languages. We also have, if you are a district that's going, you know what, I'd really like to learn more about how I can be more inclusive, I would strongly urge you to check out the Welcoming Library, the Pine Collection. The Pine Collection is a set of 30 picture books that were sent to every single district in the state of Maine. I was the manager of that program and still am. So we shipped out this beautiful bookcase with all these inclusive books. And we also published a professional development series to go with it that you can earn contact hours with as well. This is my very favorite resource. It's called Unite for Literacy. I'm not a paid spokesperson, but this is zero signups. There's zero cost. It comes in app form and web-based. It comes in 50 plus narration languages, including ASL. And it also has 3 at the time written languages. And it's always expanding. It is a nonprofit. I have spoken directly with the CEO, and they just are a really fantastic resource. So even if you are learning a new language, or you are supporting multilingual learners, or just early readers, I would highly promote Unite for Literacy. We always have the WIDA professional development modules. These are free for any Maine educator, including pre-service teachers. So if you're ever interested in going, oh, I'd love to take an asynchronous course, all these courses are available to you at no cost. And they last anywhere from 1 to 40 hours. You will know what you're getting into before you sign up for one, though. So I don't recommend you jump into a 40-hour one if you've never done one of these before. This is the book that I would highly recommend if you're ever in the space of supporting multilinguals. It's called Unlocking Multilingual Learners' Potential. And the author, Diane Stair-Fenner, has a great company called Support Ed. We're actually teaming up with her to offer educational cohort for 120 educators in the Office of Teaching and Learning coming up this January. And then I can stop sharing and answer any of your questions that you have. And then this will be in the slide, but if you have any questions and you want to contact me, my email's here. Signe or Aubrey would also have it. And there's the slide for the Maine Department of Ed. So I'll stop sharing. And if you have questions, please come off mute and ask them. And I will give my teacher wait time a try now.
That was great, Mel. Thank you so much.
Of course. So glad to be here.
I was curious, Mel, if you had any recommendations for during the bid process, if translation services needed to be incorporated what would be like the best way to approach that?
So that's a great question. So the department does have access to translation services. Um, and then the district should typically be covering those costs under Title IV. However, that would kind of have to be a conversation between DHHS and the DOE during that bid process to say, financial is typically the bigger component there on what it would cost. We do have a list of translation companies and interpreters on our website. We do not endorse anyone. You can also look up what the state currently has a contract with in the public domain to see what we are using.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you, Signe and Aubrey, for asking me to come in today. Always happy to be here to support highly mobile students. And I can stay on call too until we're done.
Great. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and pause our recording here.